40,000 years ago, before the rise of cities, before the first words were spoken, the earth itself rebelled. It began with a rumble, distant, hollow, like thunder trapped beneath the ground. Then, without warning, the sky opened. In southern Italy, a mountain split apart and a storm of fire devoured the horizon. The Campanian Ignimbrite eruption, one of the greatest volcanic cataclysms in human history, had begun. Within hours, the skies turned black. Within days, life itself began to fade. The explosion was beyond imagination. More than 200 cubic kilometers of ash and rock were thrown into the atmosphere. Rivers boiled, forests turned to flame. The blast could be heard across continents, a sound that no living thing could forget. Ash clouds soared 40 kilometers high, blotting out the sun. From Italy to Russia, the light dimmed. Even as far as northern Africa, a fine gray dust began to fall, silent, deadly snow that suffocated the world below. For months, sunlight struggled to pierce the darkened skies. Temperatures plummeted, and the warm, thriving lands of Europe were thrown into an endless winter. Across these frozen plains, small groups of early humans, Neanderthals, and the first Homo sapiens huddled together in caves. They had no understanding of why the world was dying. The game had vanished. The rivers froze. Even the trees, blackened by ash, stood like tombstones, marking the end of an age. Fire became sacred. The smallest flame meant survival, and every spark was a prayer that the sun would one day return. Food grew scarce. Mammoths and deer, once plentiful, migrated or perished. The people began to move, across mountains, through storms, following the faint memory of warmth. Some never made it. Entire clans disappeared beneath the ash. Others endured, carving stories into stone, leaving behind the only record of their struggle, symbols of a world on the edge of extinction. Modern scientists believe this eruption occurred around 39,000 years ago. It was so vast that it may have triggered a volcanic winter lasting for years. The dust and sulfur dioxide reflected sunlight, cooling the planet by several degrees. It wasn't just a regional disaster, it was global. The eruption coincided with the disappearance of many Neanderthal populations in Europe. Some researchers believe the environmental shock may have pushed them beyond recovery, while small bands of Homo sapiens, more adaptable and mobile, slowly filled the empty lands. It was not a war of weapons, but a battle of endurance against nature itself. And in the darkness that followed, humanity's future hung by a thread. When the skies finally began to clear, the world was changed forever. The air was cold, heavy with ash. Rivers had carved new paths through blackened valleys. The forests were gone, replaced by tundra and ice. But amid this wasteland, life began again. Tiny shoots of grass forced their way through the ash. Animals returned to graze, and slowly, the survivors emerged from their shelters, their eyes squinting at the weak light of a reborn sun. To them, the heavens had punished the earth, and then forgiven it. The eruption had erased much, but it also reshaped the world they would inherit. It taught them to move, to adapt, to endure. $40,000 years ago, our species faced a world that had turned against them. They had no science, no machines, no certainty that dawn would ever come again. Yet they endured. They carried the fire through the long night, and from that darkness came the first whispers of what we would become. A species that remembers, that adapts, that refuses to vanish. The day the earth turned black was not the end. It was a beginning, a trial by fire and ash that shaped the destiny of humankind. And though the mountains sleep for now, the earth still remembers, waiting deep below for the next time it will remind us that we live not upon it, but at its mercy.